This story begins with Ashley on a video call with her friend Natalie. Natalie tells her she's grounded because her mother found those books and freaked out, telling her she'd rather find drugs. Her mother forced her to return them, personally taking her to the library. Ashley insists this proves her theory. Ashland Falls didn't just change, it shrunk. Just as she starts explaining they need to investigate the power grid, she hears a knock on her door. She quickly hides the books under her bed. Natalie finds this strange, as Ashley had insisted she was alone. Ashley cautiously opens the door, but no one is there. As she closes it, there's another knock. This time, Ashley, terrified, screams her friend's name. Shortly after, a family is viewing a house with the real estate agent, Bonnie. The husband, Chuck, notes the house is much better than the last one. Bonnie admits this new house is the same price but twice the size, which makes Chuck suspicious. She explains the house has been on the market for 3 years and the sellers are desperate. Chuck's wife, Maria, and her sister, Isabel, join them. Bonnie highlights the space Isabel will have, as she'll be living with them for a semester. We see Chuck on the phone with Bonnie, complaining about multiple leaks that soaked through to the first floor after a storm. Following Bonnie's suggestion, he goes to check on Maria's studio. He finds her in the middle of a sewing live stream. While he looks for leaks, Maria tells her audience that her studio seems to have been spared. Chuck notices Maria's sewing mannequin, named Marta. Maria says it's the only memento from her New York studio, though she admits it has seen better days. Later, while inspecting the exterior, Chuck meets his neighbor, Larry, who is surprised the house finally sold. Chuck complains about the leaks, insisting the roof was supposedly new and that he's considering legal action. Larry stops him and drops the news. The previous owner committed suicide. The next morning, very early, Chuck wakes Maria up shouting. He tells her to look outside. They both see, horrified, that the mannequin Marta is standing in the middle of the yard. Maria doesn't understand how it got there and denies putting it there. Just then, Isabel comes downstairs to see what's happening. While they are outside, Larry shows up. Chuck, frustrated, jokes that the mannequin has a life of its own, or that Isabel developed a dark sense of humor. Larry gets serious and asks Chuck about Isabel's mental health, mentioning that Maria told him about her mother's accident. Larry warns him that the town has had too many suicides and that people with depression are the most vulnerable to her. He advises him to keep a close eye on Isabel because she confuses people. Before leaving, Larry gives him 2 strange pieces of advice. Read the town's history at the library and look for a group called Gardening with Friends. Chuck follows the advice and goes to the library. There he runs into Ashley, the girl from the beginning, who looks incredibly distressed. She begs him to return those books and leave town, insisting that it's all real. Chuck, confused, ignores her and goes to the counter. The librarian, Molly, looks at the files and asks if he's looking for Forest Road, warning him it's impossible to find. Chuck mentions the distressed girl and a pile of abandoned books. The librarian's expression changes, and she says she will take care of it. Back at home, Chuck sits down to read the books, which mention a 1980 council tragedy. The doorbell rings. It's Olivia, his first piano student. During the lesson, Chuck notes she is a total beginner. He goes to the kitchen to get her a glass of water, and while speaking to her from there, he suddenly hears the piano begin to be played with great skill. Chuck turns and is startled to see Olivia standing right in front of him in the kitchen. Terrified, she whispers that there is a woman sitting at the piano. Chuck runs to the living room, but no one is there. Olivia, trembling, says the woman just started playing and that she couldn't see her face because she didn't want to see her face. That night, with Maria out of town, Chuck attends the Gardening with Friends meeting. He runs into Larry, who tells him this group talks about things the town prefers to avoid. Larry asks Chuck if he has seen her yet. At the meeting, where the librarian Molly is also present, a man named Terrence laments the empty seats. They discuss how the recent suicide of a young woman, Ashley, has made everyone go into hiding, feeling like the 80s all over again. Molly confirms that those books have reappeared. Terrence explains to Chuck that everyone there has been affected by her, either by losing a loved one to suicide or by being personally terrorized. Another woman adds that the dreams are the worst part. Terrence warns that leaving town doesn't work. Once she marks you, it's like an infection. Chuck, overwhelmed, finally asks who they are talking about. Helen Foster, Terrence replies. He explains that Helen has been causing pain in the town for decades and the meetings are secret out of fear. Molly insists she's unstoppable, though another member says she will stop when they find Forest Road. Larry specifies 825 Forest Road, where Helen supposedly lived and killed herself in the 40s. The group debates if the house exists. Molly insists there's no proof, but another claims that destroying that house is the only way to destroy Helen, as it's the source of her power. Just then, Larry hears something. Terrence abruptly ends the meeting. As everyone leaves in fear, Chuck stays behind and hears noises. He peeks into a nearby chapel and sees a woman sitting there, who laughs and turns her head toward him. The story flashes back to the day they viewed the house. We see Isabel going upstairs alone to the second floor. She enters a room, turns on the light, and for an instant, we see Helen's figure in a corner before it disappears. Later, Isabel records a voice note for her therapist. She says she's not sure about the move, as she's been having incredibly vivid dreams about her dead mother, dreams that feel too real. Chuck comes in and she explains about the notes. He sees a sketch by Isabel. It's the new house. Isabel says she drew it years ago, though she doesn't remember why. Chuck also sees a drawing of her with a strange hand, which Isabel thinks is her mother's, made right after Chuck abandoned them. He tries to defend himself. Before leaving, he asks for her help unpacking the kitchen, and they both recall how their mother used to stack plates in pyramids with a note. They're not going to put themselves away. That night, Isabel has a nightmare and wakes up startled just as she hears Chuck yelling at Maria about the Marta mannequin in the yard. She goes downstairs and, confused, only manages to say she didn't do it. Later, when Chuck returns from the gardening meeting, he finds Isabel playing the piano. She asks where he was, reminding him Maria isn't home. He mentions the gardening meeting. Isabel, upset, tells him she feels something strange is going on in town and tells him a girl from her school, Ashley, committed suicide the night before. Isabel confesses she's having trouble differentiating what's real and what's in her head, and that a friend, Luke, told her the town has an effect on people. Chuck, worried, asks if she's had suicidal thoughts. Isabel admits not in that way, but that she feels a physical pain in her heart every day. When Chuck suggests her therapist should prescribe her pills, Isabel gets offended. He tries to console her, asking her to stop blaming herself for their mother's accident, that it was just a tragedy. Isabel rejects him, reminding him he lost their mother too, but a long time ago, and throws it in his face that he distanced himself so much that his own wife didn't even know he had a sister. The next day, Luke visits Isabel. She tells him about gardening with friends, and Luke laughs, explaining that everyone knows they don't talk about plants at those meetings. He tells her the library legend. A guy hung himself there, and the pile of books he used to stand on keeps reappearing in the aisle, even after they get rid of them. Maria interrupts briefly to ask Isabel if she went into her studio. After Isabel denies it, Luke asks if Maria is her sister, but she clarifies she's her sister-in-law. Isabel then asks him what causes the town's mystery. Luke tells her the full story of Helen Foster, a woman who lived there 50 years ago whose daughter was suffering from terrible bullying. Helen wrote letters to the school and the bullies' family, but no one did anything, and her daughter ended up killing herself. Helen fell apart, and right before losing the house, she killed the bully and his parents, and then committed suicide by shooting herself. Isabel asks which house was hers. Luke tells her nobody knows, they only have an address, 825 Forest Road, which doesn't exist on any current maps. He explains that maps from that era have been sealed since the 50s. There was a vote in 1980 to unseal them, but the session never happened. People outside say they saw the council members inside, but also a single woman sitting in the audience, Helen Foster. Later, Isabel records another voice note for her therapy. She says the dreams about her mother are getting worse. In one, she went downstairs and her mother was in the kitchen, just standing there. Isabel tried to talk to her, but she wouldn't answer. And suddenly her mother started screaming at her. A horrifying scream Isabel had only heard once in her life, right before she died. That night, Maria invites Isabel to an art gallery. They both start to connect. Maria confesses she didn't want to go alone either. Isabel admits she thought Maria didn't like her, since she ruined the perfect life Chuck and Maria had. Maria reassures her, and to help her understand why she's supportive, confesses she has problems too. She's bipolar and on medication. She tells her she's only had 2 serious episodes, and that Chuck, while supportive, doesn't get it, because he doesn't know how to deal with anything he can't physically fix. She tells Isabel that, unlike Chuck, she can understand what she's going through. Suddenly, they hear screams and an announcement asking everyone to evacuate the gallery. As they leave, Isabel notices a painting that was blank before, but now she sees the figure of a woman in it. The gallery staff runs to cover the painting. That same night, Isabel is sleeping. Her bathroom light turns on by itself. She wakes up, turns it off, and goes back to bed. The light turns on again. Isabel, annoyed, turns it off again, but this time she takes out the light bulb and leaves it on the nightstand. She gets back in bed, but the light without a bulb turns on once more. Isabel is terrified. She looks at the bulb still on the table and then sees horrible hands and Helen's head emerge from the wall. Isabel wakes up screaming, realizing it was all a nightmare. But looking to her side, she sees the light bulb on the table, confirming what happened was real. The next day, she tells Luke everything. He asks what she wants to do, and Isabel, determined, tells him, "Find Forest Road." Luke flat out refuses to help her. He explains there are rumors that Ashley and her friend were also looking for Forest Road, and that maybe they found it. A friend of Ashley's told him that strange things started happening to her right before she killed herself. Just then, Isabel gets a call from Chuck, telling her to come home immediately. Isabel arrives and finds Maria in a state of panic. Chuck, very serious, tells Isabel to start packing her things. Isabel, putting the pieces together, asks if he's going to look for Helen Foster's house. Maria, who is present, asks in confusion, "Who is Helen Foster?" While Isabel is packing in her room, Luke arrives. She tells him she's leaving for campus. Luke, meanwhile, looks at a photo of Isabel and her mother on the wall and casually says, "I met your mom. She's nice. She answered the door." Isabel freezes and tells him it's not funny. Luke insists, describing the woman. Isabel, trembling, says, My mom is dead, Luke. She died in a crash a few months ago." Luke, pale, tries to make an excuse, saying maybe he saw Maria, but Isabel shows him the photo and he confirms it was that woman. Suddenly, there's the sound of breaking glass from downstairs. Luke, terrified, makes an excuse and leaves. As he walks down the stairs, a creepy voice whispers, "Isabel." Maria appears. The voice calls again, "Isabel, it's me, Mommy." The voice repeats the phrase they remembered from their mother. "These plates aren't going to put themselves away." Then the voice turns sinister and asks if she doesn't want to see her after what you did to her. At that moment, Helen materializes in front of them. Maria and Isabel run in terror. Isabel locks herself in her room while Maria runs to hers and also barricades the door. Suddenly, Maria's door opens on its own. Trembling with fear, she hides behind the bed while listening to Helen's laughter. Moments later, the laughter stops. We then see a flashback to the day they visited the house, where Maria joked with Bonnie that for that price they might find bodies in the basement. Later, we see her waiting in the car the day Chuck went to the library. The conversation turns to Isabel, and Maria reveals to Chuck that he needs to understand the accident's impact on her, as Isabel was the one driving when their mother died. Days later, Maria is on the phone with her sister, Allie, complaining about life in the town. As Maria leaves the room, we see Helen's reflection in the mirror for an instant. In the kitchen, Chuck tells Maria what he found in the books. In 1953, they changed all the street names and redefined the boundaries. Their house used to have the address 15 Rose Lane. Later, Maria finds the plates stacked in a pyramid with the note, "They're not going to put themselves away." She laughs, assuming it was Isabel. In another scene, Maria is in her car, listening to a news report about the Ashley Thorpe tragedy, unaware that Helen's figure is watching her from outside the vehicle. The story moves forward to the day of her live stream. Maria gets up briefly and upon returning, notices the mannequin Marta has moved slightly. She readjusts it, confused, and goes to Isabel's room to ask if she came in. This is the scene we saw with Luke present. The day of the art gallery, Maria tells Chuck how strange it was that they covered the paintings and kicked them out. The next day, Maria is on another live stream. As she talks, the mannequin Marta, behind her, subtly moves a hand. Her sister Allie, watching live, starts calling her insistently, but Maria ignores it. Marta moves her hand again. Allie calls again. While Maria shows some dresses, Marta's head slowly turns. Maria then gets a text message from another friend, Claire, urgently telling her to get out of the house. Maria turns around and realizes Marta's gone. Just then, she hears a loud noise and finds Marta standing in Isabel's room. Maria stares at it, and the mannequin's head turns toward her. Maria runs out screaming. The next scene is the one we've seen. Chuck and Maria are in the yard burning the mannequin. Chuck, instead of comforting her, asks if she's taking her pills. Maria explodes in frustration, reminding him that thousands of people saw the mannequin move on her stream. She accuses him of it all being his fault, that he dragged them to this town just to get his own redemption and fix things with his sister. That's when Isabel enters, and Maria, crying, asks her about Helen Footer. This leads us to the scene where Maria finds the plates stacked again, but this time the note reads, "Hi, Maria." She sees Helen, the plates explode, and the entity torments her, culminating in the nosebleed scene. Now we see Maria lying in bed, recovering. But when Chuck leaves the room, Maria opens her eyes with a vacant stare. At that moment, Luke returns to the house with an old map. He explains to Chuck and Isabel that he figured out how Ashley found 825 Forest Road. He says everyone was obsessed with the street maps, but Ashley was smarter. She realized the only thing the town forgot to alter was the 1923 electrical grid map. By comparing that map to current ones, she could see the boundary changes and find the real location. Chuck, determined, says he will go. Isabel insists on going with him. Just then, the doorbell rings. It's Bonnie, the real estate agent, with a cameraman ready to film the couple's testimonial. Chuck tries to send her away, but to everyone's surprise, Maria comes downstairs, perfectly dressed and made up, saying she feels better than ever and that she will do the filming. And then, with a cold smile, she tells Chuck to go find Forest Road, an address no one had mentioned to her. Isabel, suspicious, asks Luke to please stay and watch Maria. Chuck and Isabel leave. At the house, Maria sits down for the interview. When Bonnie asks about the house's flaws, Maria starts talking in a strange voice about the first time her daughter came home from school crying. Bonnie, confused, asks if she means Isabel, but Maria, now clearly possessed by Helen, begins to narrate the story of her daughter's bullying and suicide. Meanwhile, Chuck and Isabel reach the end of a closed road and continue on foot through the woods. They finally find the abandoned house. Chuck asks Isabel to look for something to confirm it's the house. As Isabel goes upstairs, the possessed Maria's voice narrates how she was civilized at first, how she wrote dozens of letters to the Clark family, the bullies' parents, that were never answered. In the abandoned house, Chuck finds a hiding spot in the floor. Inside is a box with the returned letters Helen wrote. He reads the recipient's address, Mr. and Mrs. Clark, 825 Forest Road. In that instant, Chuck remembers his own house's original address, 15 Rose Lane. He understands everything. 825 Forest Road wasn't Helen's house. It was the Clark's house. His house, 15 Rose Lane, was Helen Foster's real house. Chuck runs upstairs, yelling for Isabel that they have to leave right now. He finds her standing, motionless, in front of a doorway. Back at the family home, Luke desperately asks the possessed Maria, "Who is your daughter?" Maria replies, "Marie." Luke asks, "And where is Marie?" Maria, her face disfigured with rage, screams that she is dead. Helen manifests, the door slams shut, and she attacks Bonnie and the cameraman while Luke hides. Back at the house in the woods, Chuck approaches Isabel, who is still frozen. A ghostly hand rests on Isabel's shoulder. Chuck runs to save her, but an invisible force grabs them both and drags them violently into the room, slamming the door shut.